Hi, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Michelle Cades, the SEPTA president, and I'm joined behind the scenes this evening by our SEPTA advocacy chair, Diane Cooper-Gould, and our communications chair, Rachel Macias, along with our technical guru, Larry Mills from FCCPTA. Thank you to our Fairfax County panelists who are joining us tonight. We have Superintendent Scott Brabrand, Assistant Superintendent for the Department of Special Services, Teresa Johnson, Director of Special Education Instruction, Mike Bloom, and Section 504 Specialist, Kathy Murphy. We also have Catherine helping us out this evening with our interpretation. Thank you very much. It's been quite a week of town halls. This is the third night in a row for Dr. Brabrand. He's joining us just coming off of one that he did in Spanish. So thank you all very much for your time tonight. Before we get started, I did just want to name an elephant that appeared at our family dinner table tonight regarding the public criticism that came out in the news today from Betsy DeVos. I just wanted to share personally, I don't want to get political, but I did want to share that I found it very uncalled for and unprofessional for someone in such a prominent national position to make such public criticism of FCPS. We all know that you are all, as my great uncle would say, working your tuchuses off, and you're working harder than you ever had in your professional lives. And for that, I wanted to say thank you before we even really get rolling.
Thank you, Michelle. I very much appreciate those introductory comments. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So we have a quick poll to just get a feel for who our audience is tonight. So Larry's going to help us out with putting up our poll questions, please. So the first one, which of these best describes you and or your family? Select all that apply. If none apply, just don't answer the question, please. What do we have? Elementary. All right, so we have 10% early childhood, 52% elementary, middle school is 20%, high school is 23%, and FCPS staff is 39%. Terrific. Thank you all very much for joining us. And Larry, there was a second question as well? Have you made your decision on how your students will return in the fall? Select everything that applies. So 100% virtual, face-to-face, homeschool or private school, or no, you have not yet decided. And what do we get? 20% doing virtual, 30% face-to-face, 3% opting out, and 50% not yet made a decision. All right. Thank you very much for answering that. That gives us a good sense of where we are this evening. SEPTA has received over 300 questions from the special education community regarding the return to school plans. Behind the scenes, we worked exceptionally hard to select the questions that we're going to be asking tonight. Many of these questions were submitted to FCPS 2 weeks ago, and some of them were rolling in 30 minutes ago. In selecting tonight's questions, we chose those which covered the wide range of our needs of our diverse special education students, parents, and staff. Thank you to so many parents and staff who contributed your questions and your concerns. We're going to get pretty technical and into the weeds because this is the information that parents need in order to make the best decision for their children. So for our panelists, if you could please try to keep your answers brief and not reiterate the basic information that's already been presented or that is available on the FCPS website so that we can get through as much as possible in our short time. So let's jump in. The special education update to parents on July 6th stated that all students with IEPs, and presumably those with 504 plans as well, would need to have addendums or IEP meetings to assess how to support the students and achieve their goals in either learning option. However, these meetings are not scheduled to begin until after school has started. Since approximately 29,000 students have IEPs in Fairfax County, it's not feasible that these meetings will be accomplished in time to get the necessary supports and goals in place prior to the beginning of the school year. Teachers are also concerned about who will teach their classes while they're in meetings. So how will FCPS adequately support our special education students from the very start of the year? How can IEP teams help with selecting the better placement choice if the teams are not meeting until after school begins? And then is the burden on parents to inform teachers in both settings what their students need for distance learning? And I'll go back and repeat those questions as you answer. Thanks.
Well, Michelle, first of all, thank you for having us here today. It's really great. Yes, it's a week of town halls, but it's part of our service to the community because we're in an unprecedented time and people want as much information as they can to make the decisions, especially our special education community, because there are so many unique needs and unique questions. We're gonna do our best to answer them tonight, so I'll be brief in making that general response, and I wanna thank my team for joining us. Ms. Johnson, do you wanna start with the first question?
Sure. So I want to share that we do anticipate that IEP meetings are going to start in August. I've already had principals reach out to me because we do have special ed staff, our department chairs and lead teachers on an extended contract, so they'll be returning to work earlier than the majority of the teachers. It is expected that the staff are going to use that time when they do come back, because of course we don't anticipate every IEP to be completed before all the teachers return. But our expectation is that when teachers return to work and department chairs and lead teachers return to work, they're going to begin to schedule these meetings and participate as needed in their professional development responsibilities while they're also returning those earlier days. And we do appreciate, I think, all the principals as well, with Dr. Brabrand advocating for pushing the start date back, which will help tremendously in getting those IEPs done and take some of that workload off. We hope to have the majority of them, that schools will have the majority of them done prior to school starting to help assist with what those services might look like in either the full-time online setting or in the in-person setting. If teachers do need to have, if they do need to complete during the school day and there's some reason a meeting needs to take place, it'll be business as usual when teachers have typically been in school, support staff or other teachers have assisted with, or department chairs, lead teachers helped with covering those classes.
Michelle, if I could just say 15 seconds or less, this is part of why I am asking the school board to move the start date to September 8th. Our teachers need to come back. We have to create 2 school systems this year, normal, regular school systems, 2 of them, 1 virtual, 1 in person. This is going to be more time for those teachers to have time to have these IEP meetings, to connect with families. I hope SEPTA will support our extension. My request to the board, which I am making tomorrow, to extend the calendar to September 8th. I know people want to be back, but we have to prepare to have our kids ready to be back, and this is part of that preparation.
So thank you for reiterating that point as well, because that is very new news to us all. The question about how can IEP teams help with selecting the placement choice? Let's say a parent chooses one placement and then has their IEP meeting and realizes that a different one will be better. Will there be that flexibility to switch?
I would say in general, let me make sure I understand the question. In general, we're trying to ask families to make that decision now about virtual or in person. And I know these special ed folks can talk a little bit about the IEP. You know, the IEP teams meet during the year and they have made different placements even in a normal school year. So we need to respect that IEP process, but also understand we really are trying to figure out now where you think your child will most be, will most flourish in the in-person that we're offering or in the virtual. I don't know, Mike or Teresa, do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Well, I just want to add that, you know, I think in one of your letters, Dr. Brabrand, you stressed that staff and students and families need to make decisions based on the health and safety of their children. So they should prioritize that over above and beyond what they think, whether it's special ed services in virtual or in the school setting. I think you've reiterated that, Dr. Brabrand, in one of your letters.
And is the burden going to be on parents to inform teachers in both settings what their students need for distance learning?
I understand the question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Brabrand.
I wouldn't say that, you know, we always have to. I've become more aware of the use of words than ever before. And I know I speak a lot and I have to sometimes go back and re-clarify something I've said. I'd rather not use the word burden versus collaboration to find out, you know, some parents may already know from the first 3 months of, or the last 3 months of the school year, what worked for their kid. I actually have several special ed families say, and Michelle, it might have been a conversation you and I had, my kid flourished in virtual. We had some special ed families go, no way, this did not work for my child. So use the experience a little bit of the last 3 months to help determine what you know your child would be best in. Our teachers are coming back well aware of the school closure and the impact on special education kids in particular. So I think they're going to be proactive, but I also want parents to feel comfortable to say, hey, here's what I know works as you're making your decision. Health and safety, yes, as Teresa said, and I have shared that as the primary, but you also know where you believe your kid, again, health and safety first, but the next tier, which way did they thrive? And I think those two combined together is probably the best 1-2 way. Let me just share one other quick thing for special ed parents, because I'm having other parents ask me this. I don't know about in person, your mask, it looks like you're going to be strict. We are going to be strict on masks. We know there are some exceptions for special education kids though. But here's what I'd say. In general, put a mask on your child now. Have them walk around for the next 2 days for about 6 hours and 45 minutes, which is the instructional day. Of course, a break once in a while and then a break for lunch. How do they feel in a mask? Do they feel comfortable? Is this driving them crazy? That's one thing I would really ask parents, especially special education parents, to say, is this going to become such a distraction? I'm a little bit of an ADHD person. Is that going to be such a distraction I can't learn? And I think those are individual to kids and families. And that plus what your kid's experience was the fourth quarter together with health and safety are a good way to make a decision.
All right, and we'll come to a couple of other more specific mask questions, but thank you for suggesting that as well. Thinking about evaluations in terms of leading up to the IEPs, since March, evaluations have been suspended, which has resulted in many students waiting in limbo without services. But federal IDEA timelines were not waived, so many of these cases are potentially now in non-compliance. Some of these families opted to instead use outside providers for evaluations because FCPS declined to do testing in the spring and summer. Will FCPS accept outside evaluations for families that have been waiting to get their child's eligibility completed?
Mike or Teresa, you want to go over those?
Sure. So I can let you know that next week, as our FCPS offices begin to open, we are going to be conducting summer clinics, and we do plan to begin select evaluations. We are sensitive to the need to catch up on some of the backlog of special education evaluations, but staff will always consider parentally obtained private evaluations and we'll use that information in combination with other information that's available and other data that's available to potentially reduce the delays in some of our evaluation.
So
for any student,
if a family presents a thorough psychoeducational evaluation, for example, is the family still going to have to wait to have more testing done by FCPS, or just wait for that time for FCPS to review it?
well, I think private psychoevaluations are a good piece of information that's used in combination with other data sources that might be available. So I think it's the collaboration of the team together, taking a look at what data the parent can provide, and then seeing what other measures or data points might be available. For example, there might be opportunity for observation to take place. There might be opportunity for either a teacher or a parent interview to take place, some rating sheets or scale sheets. So there are other pieces of information that can be used in conjunction with private evaluations. But the answer is yes, we will be looking at any private evaluations and using that as a data source for decision making.
Okay.
Two
That's
big
nice
nuggets
to
there,
hear.
Michelle. The answer is yes to private evaluations. We're speeding up summer clinic. And we know all of us right now are trying to catch up from 3 months of this school closure, set up distance learning. We're moving away from TLPs. We're back to IEPs for every child. And we know we have some catching up to do. I'm really excited because I know our teachers are ready to get back into it and get reconnected with special education families and kids to get some of this work done. And we are gearing up to get it done starting as early as next week.
Terrific. So, and it's nice to know the clinic is starting up as well. In earlier presentations, Mondays were listed as intervention days for special education students, as well as teacher planning days. It was said that students with IEPs would have increased synchronous instruction. So what does increased synchronous instruction mean? And more importantly, how will that look both for virtual and in person? Will that time apply for all special education students or just some? Will that time be just on Mondays? And I'll go back with these questions again. Staff would like to know when they're going to have their planning time if their Mondays are being used for working with special education students.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, I'll save the last one it'll lead in. It's fine.
Hey, Mike, how about taking that one on instruction? I think that'd be a good one for you to share.
Sure. So right now, our principals and administrators are currently considering how they're going to be planning instructional time and how instructional time will be allocated during the school day. We do anticipate that some of our students will be engaged in that supplemental instruction on Mondays during the half day of available time. Teachers will receive planning time on Mondays. Planning time will be scheduled for Monday afternoons for teachers. And also teachers will get approximately a half hour a day, also planning time during the rest of the week. When we talk about increased synchronous instruction, that synchronous instruction really references the increase of time for face-to-face online instruction. So for those parents who select full-time online instruction as an option for their children, they'll have increased synchronous instruction compared to what they were receiving in the spring. So I think that references a comparison to what students may have been receiving in the virtual environment the past 4 months versus an increase in that time face-to-face or in online instruction moving into the fall.
What about families who choose the in-person option then?
So the in-person option, they'll follow the instructional schedule for the week. So whether you're an elementary, middle, or high school student, you're going to have a structured schedule that you're going to follow. And again, once IEP teams get together and they start to take a look at and discuss the needs of kids, then decisions are going to have to be made regarding that schedule and when there might be opportunity for increased remediation or service time. And again, some of those conversations are going to take place within the context of that IEP meeting time. So while we'll have a framework for a schedule for all grade levels, there's going to be flexibility in the schedule to be mindful of those students who may need some extra intervention time. And that Monday time might be one opportunity to provide some of that additional intervention that they might need.
Okay. One question that we got later today, but came actually a couple times. Can students who have IEPs opt for Gen Ed virtually and then have in-person synchronous instruction? Now, from what I just heard you saying, the increased synchronous instruction is meant to be more of a virtual platform rather than a in-person. So I guess I'm looking for confirmation on that in that case.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit off script from some of the questions we had planned on. If a student, I think we'll get to it a little bit later, but I'm going to jump. If we have a student who is opting for in-person instruction, and some of their time is spent in general education and some of it is spent in special education, but they're only going to be in school for 2 days a week, will they miss some of their gen ed instruction time in order to get their special ed time? Or is that what those Mondays are going to be for?
So, I mean, you can add to this, Mike. I think there may be the possibility, depending on what the IEP teams decide are really the needs of the child. And we do anticipate those days in school are going to look similar to what days in school look like prior to our school closure. There may be instances when a student needs to be pulled or needs to access that Monday, or maybe needs to access another day during the week where that time might need to be built in. So we're going to have to provide for some flexibility, but we also need to, this is part of our challenge, and Dr. Brabrand talks about the chicken and the egg all the time, because we need to know to respect social distancing, respect social distancing on buses, what it's going to look like. So how many students are going to be in school and opt for the in-person. So I do think, Michelle, to answer your question, we're going to have to consider a lot of different options and be creative how we're supporting students.
Thank you. Kathy, this is probably a question for you. How will 504 plans be implemented in both options? Will they be revised to address needs specific to the virtual learning environment? And if so, by whom and how soon?
So thank you for that question. We actually started working on this at the time of the closure, and the guidance to our schools was that they needed to be meeting on your children with 504 plans and planning for both in-person and virtual. So the idea was trying to have the plan in place so that, we're ready for either option. And in many cases, the 504 plan can be implemented in sort of one track, regardless of the option, but some teams have had to go further and outline how that might look. So we are going to continue in that way. Any students who need to have their plans updated, will have them updated, just as was described about the IEP. And we certainly plan on continuing to do that before school begins. Most of our students on 504 plans, their case managers are the school counselor. So the school counselor is their first point of contact. Each building has a 504 school-based coordinator, and that person is the building point of contact, both within the building and also to central office and to my role. So we continue to work to make sure that we can implement plans as written.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is going to go to you also or to someone else, but how will common accommodations such as movement breaks for our sensory kids, chewies and fidgets, flexible seating, weighted blankets, how will these types of accommodations be administered in both virtual and in-person options?
So I can go ahead and take that one, sure. So So if a student requires an accommodation like a fidget or a movement cushion in the in-person option, those accommodations are going to be provided to the student, and we'll make sure that those items are not shared between students. So students will have their own sets of fidgets or other accommodations that they might need. If those same accommodations are going to be required for learning in the home environment, then we'll also be sending those required supplies home as well. So
Okay.
they'll be available really in both environments.
Terrific.
I can say also with that, we would want to work with the parents to consult with them if there are issues with the virtual environment that are more controllable within the home environment. Sometimes that's going to involve some consultation or coaching.
Can you give me an example of that?
So sometimes a preferential seating in the home environment may seem, different and may, the parent may need some ideas for how to make that work in the home. So it's really about that collaboration. We want to make sure we build that in. It's still our responsibility to make sure it happens, but it's going to have to be a collaboration when we're talking about the virtual environment.
Okay, and we'll be talking a little bit more about some of those collaboration pieces, so thank you. Regarding in virtual instruction, there's a lot of concern among parents about who's going to be teaching. And I know that there's the chicken and the egg, and you have to wait and hear back from teachers before, and it's an impossible situation to answer some of these questions. But I will ask, are all of the virtual teachers in all grades going to be FCPS teachers, or will some classes or grades use outside vendors such as Virtual Virginia to teach classes?
So let me take that one. Of course, the majority of our instruction is going to be FCPS teachers. And I'm going to do everything I can to get our teachers back. We're still exploring things. I know childcare is still an issue. Frankly, it's an issue for a whole community, but it's especially an issue for our school-based staff. And we're still working furiously to figure out ideas. And we have a staff town hall, actually. I see that several people on your call are FCPS staff. We have a staff town hall Friday at 2 p.m. And we're going to do everything we can to continue to figure out how we can get our teachers back. Of course, teachers need to make decisions that include the part about health and safety, and they've made requests based on the CDC guidance and ADA accommodations. But we know some have preferences, and we just don't know how the preferences will work yet till we see what the families choose.
Okay, so
but at middle and high, or at high school, there are some Virtual Virginia courses, and some kids could be in those depending on what the course selection is. We also have online campus. I think 1,500 are already registered for that. They're going to be in for that online campus. And then we're going to continue, hopefully, though, as we get these selections, that we're going to create virtual cohorts. Most are going to be school-based, but it is possible, right, if you're trying to make a class and you need just a few more kids to really make the whole class, a nearby school. I kind of used to do this when I was a high school principal, and Teresa probably did too, where you're trying to have a higher level course, a specialty course like, say, AP Latin, and you pull a few kids from your school to go over, in my case at Fairfax, to Woodson to get a complete class of AP. We may do that virtually.
Right, and looking at our special education students and their specialized classes, I will get to a few questions about their specialized groups. But on that broader picture of who is going to be teaching whom, will students be kept with their familiar peers and their case managers for virtual instruction? And will special ed students be prioritized to be matched with teachers from their base schools? I did see that the FAQ page says that as a default rule, we're going to try to have students receive instruction at their base schools. So from our population's perspective, I interpret that to mean wherever our students are placed for their IEP rather than their true base school.
Michelle, let me take this one, because I think what happened in the early stages of planning, we did envision about how wide we'd go on flexibility. We did. The longer we look at this, the more we're going to try to do our staffing virtual and in person, school-based. But I am going to leave some room.
Mhm.
It won't be the majority. The majority will be school-based and cohort school-based. But I'm going to leave some room for flexibility so that we can offer classes where, yeah, you might be with a few other kids, even if you're a special
Sure.
education kid, so that we can offer that course. And so that's what I want to say to families. But the default is not going to be go somewhere else to have your schooling in person or virtually. But there may be opportunities where it needs to happen so that we can offer it. And if that's what I'd ask the community's flexibility a little bit on, but we don't plan for it to be the majority of the experiences. But it could
Okay.
happen.
And knowing that you're going to be trying then to keep students with their base schools, obviously it'll depend on, for example, which case managers choose to be virtual and which case managers choose to be in person. But hopefully you'll be trying to keep teachers from the same schools with the students from those schools.
Sure, and hopefully, I mean, you know, I'm an optimist sometimes beyond the people's perception of what the human experience should be. But I hope every case manager wants to come back in person that does not have a significant medical need to not be. Those that do need to stay home and stay safe. And
I know that. Go ahead.
No, and we want to do that. And then, you know, we're going to continue to try to think outside the box about how teachers that are still at the school can still connect. And we're going to just look at that as much as possible. We know how important the relationships are that have been established between case managers and special education teachers and families, and we want to try to preserve as many of those relationships as we absolutely can, even though we know this year the staff impacts are greater than a normal year, because we hire over 1,000 teachers. We hire hundreds of special education teachers. But this year, the churn rate is going to be a little higher just because we're in this create a virtual school option mode.
Sure. And for those situations where we are not using FCPS staff, and it sounds like hopefully that will not be the majority from what I'm hearing you say.
Correct.
But if when we are using, let's say, Virtual Virginia or whatever have you, another vendor, how will the IEP and 504 accommodations be implemented? This is really crucial on all ends of the spectrum, from our 2E students to our students following adapted curriculum. Will the vendor staff work with FCPS IEP teams?
Teresa, do you want to try that one? I know that's something that we've been talking with Virtual Virginia about.
Yes, and I did reach out to instructional services to get a little more clarification, because at this time, it's my understanding that when a student takes a course directly from Virtual Virginia, that the Virtual Virginia program provides the teacher, and there are no special ed or English language learner accommodations through Virtual Virginia. I think what instructional services is really exploring how we could provide special ed or English language support as much as we possibly can, and how we would have some level of responsibility then as FCPS to assign a school-based mentor and to monitor the student progress. So I think instructional services is really exploring how we be able to support our students in the Virtual Virginia program right now.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, I know because we're with SEPTA, I'm just going to be clear and direct. I think we can continue to work to have the Commonwealth of Virginia make Virtual Virginia more robust for its special education and English language learner supports, so that this can be a real option for Fairfax families, because frankly, they have those kind of supports for our online campus, which doesn't have as many courses, say, sometimes that Virtual Virginia has. But Virtual Virginia, I think, still has some room to grow and really provide those supports so that we're not having to come back behind them to do something we're already trying to do for our existing online courses.
Got it. Thank you. I want to jump to one of our populations that haven't really been addressed much yet at all, which is our specialized programs that have particularly lower class sizes or unique facilities, such as CSS programs, deaf, hard of hearing programs, self-contained programs, enhanced autism classes, and also public day schools like Burke School, Cedar Lane, Quander Road, Kilmer, Key Center. Will these programs be able to run full-time, 5 days in person, since they are such small specialized programs?
I'll take this one. Our special ed team has been having lots of conversation about this, and we are considering the possibility of students attending these specialized programs or services within the schools and these self-contained programs. We haven't been talking about 5 days a week, but we have been considering 4 days a week and what that could look like. And we really need to start, we've started the conversations with some of these programs, and we need to continue to have these conversations. And what really is going to drive a lot of this are the number of students and adults. We have to take into account the number of students and the number of adults in these classrooms for social distancing, and how we're planning for social distancing, and how we can meet those guidelines that have been outlined by the CDC and our health department. So we really are taking a look at it in those various programs, and right now we're not committing to that, but we are very interested in exploring that possibility to meet the needs of our kids.
So what would you say or recommend to parents in those particular types of programs in terms of deciding what to do, especially given that there are students who can't be served virtually due to limitations of their disabilities, and what happens to them on those asynchronous days?
And I think, again, they need to make some decisions. Parents need to decide based on what they believe is best for their students, if they have health or they have safety concerns. But I will say, if there are significant medical concerns with individual children, that the school and the parents should collaborate and look at the possibility that maybe that child might need homebound services. So I think we need to look at all our options, and this is going to look different for children that have different medical needs.
Michelle,
you mentioned, yep.
Michelle, let me just say one thing too. We're going to do everything we can for the kids that need it most to be in person the most. I know people, and we're in the middle of, you referenced at the very beginning, this national debate. We're not saying it's 2 days in person for the entire school year, but we don't know right now. And I'm still going to do what I think is right for the safety of kids and students and staff. And it's a balance. And right now we're really, in our country, we're tearing people apart about which way. Of course, we want all of our kids back in, especially special education kids, 5 days a week. What I really think, what I see happening right now for us in Fairfax is continue on the path that we've already created with the community. And then as the school year starts, it might be 2 days. We might be able to get to 4 days for some folks really quick. Maybe in just a few months, we can be at 5 for even more kids. But it's so hard right now in the middle of what some people, Tony Fauci said, it's not even the second wave. It's still the first wave that's just resurged.
For sure, yes.
So, and I think one of the hard things right now for families, I'm Dr. Brabrand, but I don't have a doctorate in medicine. None of us in here do. We're trying to do what the experts are telling us. And the truth is, experts have said different things at different times in different places at different levels. That's why being an educator right now in school districts is an impossible job. And so, but I want to really double down. We want to get those kids back in school as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible. And the more days we can get, we know families are dying for it and want it, and we're going to try to get it to happen. We just may have to start gradually and build up over time.
So it sounds like, especially for these particular very specialized programs, there may end up being some flexibility after decisions have been made.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to jump to early childhood. We did have a good chunk of early childhood families on this evening. Okay. What are the plans for early childhood special ed, class-based, PAC, resource, and so forth? We haven't heard about early childhood.
Mike, can you tackle that one? I don't think we have Mara Burke on, but can you take a crack at that one?
Sure. So for in-person scenario, during the school year, our preschool teachers, our PAC teachers are going to be providing intensive small group instruction. They'll be specifically addressing IEP goals and the curriculum during that face-to-face learning time. Now, we know with our youngest learners, there are going to be some challenges. I think one of the challenges will involve the wearing of the mask, as many of our young learners may have a difficult time with that. The other challenge will be the social distancing, knowing that these little ones don't like to sort of sit still in one place for very long. So we're going to be holding training specific for our preschool teachers that will go over protocols for social distancing. There'll also be considerations around the cleaning protocols, realizing that these little ones, they like to touch a lot of things and share a lot of things. So we'll be purchasing individual materials for students. So there's not a lot of sharing of toys and crayons and things like that. So we're looking and taking into consideration all of those behaviors and things that those preschoolers are engaged in and our young learners. During the face-to-face instruction too, we're going to be having teachers reaching out to parents, and they'll be doing some coaching sessions to address some of the learning opportunities that naturally occur in the home. So for some of those asynchronous days, there'll be opportunities for our teachers to connect with our parents. Other asynchronous activities are going to be provided to the students to access at home. For the online instruction, our teachers are going to instruct, again, students in both large and small groups virtually. Again, they'll be looking at IEP goals, looking at addressing and delivering the curriculum to those students. And also for our online students, there's also going to be weekly coaching sessions for parents. So regardless if a parent chooses to send their child in school or in the online environment, there's going to be opportunity for a lot of collaboration with our teachers.
Great. I know that parent coaching and training has been a big question that we've heard repeatedly. So that's terrific. Thank you. Segueing into then related services. How will related services be provided in both of the options? Will there be small group and one-on-one pullouts during the in-person days? And will that then take kids out of their precious direct instruction time? Are virtual students going to be able to receive in-person related services, or are they only going to be allowed to have virtual related services? And will related services be able to provide virtual group therapy in addition to individual?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and I'll take this one as well. So special ed teachers and related service providers, they will be providing instruction and service delivery both in groups and in one-on-one sessions as appropriate for student goals. And the IEP teams, of course, will be getting together and they're talking more specifically about services and what those will look like in both the in-person and the virtual environment for related services. For students who receive related services and choose the in-person option, then those services are going to be scheduled as part of one of their days in school. So they can expect that as they look at their weekly schedule, the case managers will be mindful of scheduling those throughout their days in school. Service may be provided individually or as part of a small group. If they're in person, we're going to make sure that we have appropriate personal protective equipment and that we have social distancing protocols in place and being observed. And in some cases, in-person services may be supplemented by virtual services during those asynchronous days. So it could be a combination of both. Virtual students, they've received their services through the online format, either again in small group or one-to-one as appropriate for their needs. Again, IEP teams will have those discussions. We are considering offering in-person related services for parents who choose the online option, potentially on those Mondays during that intervention time. But again, those are decisions that will take place in the context of those IEP meetings. But, generally speaking, related service providers, they'll be pushing into small group learning environments to support students. but there will be some degree of one-to-one as needed in both the in-person as well as the virtual online environment.
And thank you. That's great a level of detail. So appreciate that. On the topic then of related services, when we look at a lot of the social emotional goals that many of our students have, a lot of that needs to be worked on almost in a more unstructured, structured interaction. So will there be opportunities for kids to interact with each other in a less formally structured type of setting, like virtual extracurricular clubs? Will there be virtual social skills groups, things like that?
I do think that our clinical staff, our school social workers, psychologists, and counselors have been doing group social skills work in the spring. We do anticipate that's going to continue. I'm not sure how much that we would be facilitating one-to-one individual student interactions without adult communication, although there may be situations where there is an IEP goal to work on social interaction with a peer that may be facilitated and monitored by an adult. That could be depending on the individual student. So we're going to provide our group therapies through the online format as well as in person. I think that our clinical staff and school counselors learned a lot in the spring about what works and what doesn't work. So we do anticipate to continue to provide supports and opportunities to socialize as much as we can within a safe environment.
All right, I want to jump to health and safety because we got a lot of questions on that, and I want to be mindful of our time as well. Many of our students do take daily medication during the day. So how will routine non-sick clinic visits be handled? Will non-sick kids be going to a separate location than children who are appearing sick, whether it's COVID or any other illness? And I understand, of course, that clinic staffing is handled by the health department. So I don't know if you know yet, are there plans to increase clinic staffing?
Let me try this one, Teresa, and you tell me if I've got it right. We're going to have a regular clinic room like we've always had, but we're also going to have an isolation room for kids that are exhibiting COVID or COVID-like symptoms. We are not going to mix those kids in the same room. Those are going to be separate.
So if a kiddo, says to their teacher, "I have a headache," making this up, would they, in that case, they would not go to the regular clinic. They would then go to the separate room.
Well, Teresa, why don't you share a little bit more? Because I know you've been working with the health department on the sort of line by line of how that would go. But we're not going to be mixing the kids that have that we might think have COVID with those that are simply routinely getting medications. And Teresa, do you want to share a little bit more about that?
I'll take a stab at this. We have been working very closely in collaboration with the Fairfax County Health Department regarding what we call a care of the sick and injured when it comes to health room procedures. So our guidance is coming directly to address, as Dr. Brabrand said, the establishment of an isolation room and what the criteria is that would get an individual student into that isolation room. So we have to look at staffing that room and what the routine procedures are. But we're going to continue to operate, or the health department's going to continue to operate our health room as they always have with daily medication administration. But for your example, if a student had a headache can mean a lot of things, right? They would be going to the clinic where they would go through a screening process, and we will be providing some information about those screening questions and what they look like, so that the community can see what questions are on there, as we'll be sharing when we hope parents will be looking at the screening questions as well. So it could be based on that criteria that a student remains in the clinic because maybe they don't meet a certain screening criteria set by the health department, or it may be, as Dr. Brabrand said, they would have to go to the isolation room and the parents would have to pick them up immediately from the isolation room. So there is going to be the attempt to the best of our ability to separate children that may may or not meet the screening criteria depending on the individual kid. And I do want to address, you asked about staffing. So Dr. Brabrand had proposed additional staffing to support increasing the number of public health nurses. And so there were 5 that were budgeted and approved, the money's funding for that to help support the addition of 5 more. In addition, the Fairfax County government, the Board of Supervisors, has a multi-year plan to continue to increase and try to lower the ratio of public health nurses to support the school system. So it's over the next 7 or 8 years or so that we're going to continue to add. So for this coming year, there are an additional 10 public health nurses based on the Fairfax County Public Schools funding, as well as the Board of Supervisors funding, to go back into the pool to support schools, Fairfax County Public Schools.
We have many kids who are require high levels of support for all different activities of daily living. And so teachers and parents are wondering about sort of staff disinfecting procedures. And also, we just heard yesterday about schools that are starting public PPE collection drives and the possibility of PTAs being asked to provide hand sanitizer stations. So specifically, what level of PPE will staff have provided to them by FCPS?
Yeah, this is great that we're having this conversation. We're providing PPE for every staff member and for every kid. We're going to provide, and PPE, we're going to provide masks for every staff member, every kid. For those needed, bus drivers will have face shields. Special education teachers, as they're needed, face shields, gloves, gowns. We are going to have the right PPE for the situations that kids have. We're going to have soap and water or a Virex solution in every classroom. We're going to have custodians working overtime to keep high-touch areas clean. We're going to clean the bus after every run. That's why, I'll be honest, the bell schedules are going to probably be a little different this year. People will go, oh my gosh, it's later than I wanted it to be, or a little different. But that's because we're going to clean that bus after every route. And those are the things. A kid doesn't have a mask when they get on the bus, we're going to have the bus driver provide them a mask. So we're really trying to know that health and safety is the driver for our community and for our staff, and doing it well.
I'm gonna jump to masks quickly, because we have many people asking about masks, and since you mentioned them, there are a lot of questions and concerns about our students with disabilities and masks, beyond the wonderful suggestion of try it and experiment with it and see how it goes. But we know that when we're talking about students who are not able to wear a mask, this is our population that we're really looking at. So if a student with a disability refuses to wear a mask or removes their mask, will this be treated as a discipline issue? And how will this be enforced for different ages and abilities?
I think here we need to be very careful what we're saying and what we're not saying. We need to have a mask culture in Fairfax County Public Schools this year. The health officials say wearing masks is a key mitigation strategy, huge mitigation. And you've seen masks kind of go from not being important at all to steadily rising as an important piece. Our FAQ, when you go to it, we're developmentally appropriate. We know that some kids may have a medical issue, special ed. A special ed kid may have a unique need, but we need to be doing that case by case, exception by exception. It's not, hey, my kid has an IEP, I don't wear a mask. The overall message is we want children, to the best of their ability, to wear masks during the school day. But obviously, we know there may be some exceptions, and then we need to work with the teacher. It could be right that there's a teacher, oh my gosh, we're going to have to work with the teacher and the kid. And I am hopeful that our kids are going to rise to the occasion, just like any rule we have, and say this is what, now more than ever, we need compliance. I think we need to distinguish between the developmentally appropriate issue of a kid struggling to get comfortable with the mask versus a kid who's simply just saying, I don't want to wear a mask because
Of course.
I don't want to wear shoes to school, or I don't want to bring a pencil to class.
So in classrooms where students have severe needs, like in our Cat B classes or enhanced autism, and many students are not able to wear a mask and the teachers
Correct.
are required to physically interact. But you've already described about the PPE for teachers, but how will teachers be able to keep their students safe and socially distanced?
So Teresa or Mike, but I'll let you take that, and then maybe I'll add something in afterwards.
Obviously it's going to be very challenging. There are students with some significant disabilities in many of our programs where they have to have physical interaction with teachers. And as much as possible, we are going to try to limit, and this is the direction from the health department, limit the number of staff members who are having direct physical contact and interaction with students throughout the day. In addition to the PPE, as Dr. Brabrand said, teachers are going to have specific supplies in their classroom to help support. But I think staff is going to need to follow all the universal precautions to the highest extent that they possibly can. But we have to be real that there are going to be situations when there's a quick response that's going to be needed between students or a student. And it's going to be a challenge. I know there's conversations, well, is a teacher going to wash their hand after every interaction with the kid? I think to the extent possible to use hand sanitizer or wash their hands, that's going to be an expectation. But I think we also need to be real with the fact that there are going to be situations that are going to come up that need immediate attention. That teachers are going to have to do the best they possibly can.
Michelle, just to take what Teresa has said, who's done such an excellent job of saying it. Yes, in our most significant cases, there's going to be where there's always been daily hands-on contact. There's still going to be that. And can we do 6 feet? No, we're not. We got some additional flexibility from the state, by the way. And this may be a case, for example, where it's going to be less than 6 feet. It suggested even 3 feet. We're going to have gloves, gowns, face shields, masks for teachers, the appropriate supplies in the classroom, hand sanitizer, frequent custodians coming in to clean those classrooms. We're going to do everything we can. And again, asking families to make that pledge. If your kid doesn't feel good, and special education families, as much as every family, your kid doesn't feel good, don't do what we've sometimes had a culture of in Fairfax. I'll just send my kid in, it'll be okay. It's not going to be okay. And we're going to be flagging kids with symptoms and sending them home, because we can't have sick kids in school in a coronavirus environment right now. It's just too risky for our staff and for other kids.
I would love to squish in one more big thought question, and then I have a very quick answer question.
Okay.
Do you have time for one more here?
Yeah, and I think, Teresa, some of these questions we didn't get to, we can put in FAQs and
Yes.
try to get out.
Absolutely, and even some of them have already been posted. We just need to work on the rest of them for you.
Are they posted on this?
I just want to say that I know you said 300 questions 2 weeks ago. We want to get as many. I don't know how many we've answered, and maybe not enough. As many as we can get answered before people have to sign on the dotted line on July 15th. That's why we're here. We have people working, really, to be honest, 17, 18, 19 hours a day, and the weekends.
We've been having some of those days at SEPTA too.
We all are. We're in the COVID-19 bubble, and I think what people sometimes wish is, can't we wake up and this just all goes away? But we've already seen that insight, and it's not going away. The virus is with us, and it requires a careful balance of following the data, following the health guidance, and staying as educators and keeping the politics out of schools and school districts. Very tough to do because we all have opinions, but trying to keep that steady, solid line of balancing safety for staff and students, but also understanding the power of having kids back in school for all those rich connections and the data around kids and transmissions being so much lower than other more targeted populations. That is every district in the country. And Fairfax, frankly, I think our challenge has been, hey, you know, we can solve it because we're Fairfax. This is not something, a worldwide pandemic is not in Fairfax County Public Schools magic toolbox to just solve. We need to do the best we can, and I believe we will do it as well as anyone, if not the best in the country. But it's hard work, and we're committed to doing it for families.
I hope that's a quote for you for the paper, because there's your pep talk. I want to jump from where you said that, though, in thinking about those firm limits and rules. And we've talked about consistency in the past. Last night on the FCCPTA program, you said that decisions like the option of potentially eating in the cafeteria was going to be at the discretion of school principals, which right away then starts to get to inconsistency. And these are the kinds of details that parents really need in order to make their choices. For example, parents of students with food allergies, which is
Right.
1 in 13 students. How do parents take these factors into account if these decisions are going to be made on a school-by-school basis?
Well, I don't know, was that a question you had in here or shared before? And it probably doesn't matter. I would just say it this way. Our facilities are so different. We want to allow principals to maximize their space. You know, people have said, what about outdoors? Of course, outdoors. What about the cafeteria? We don't want to rule it out. It may not happen in every school, but there's some schools that have such small populations, the kids could go in the cafeteria and be 6 feet apart. Lake Braddock Secondary School's got 4,000 kids. And, you know, how's that going to work? They've still got to work through that. And we want to give principals a little bit of room about it. I think the issue is, say, for allergies, we've got to figure out folks that have the concern about where the food is done and figure out how we handle those, but still leave more flexibility for, could kids go eat outside at lunch? Could they be in a classroom? Could they be in the hallway? And I want to leave, I've talked about this with principals, and they'd like to leave a little room because it's hard in 200 schools to say just one size fits all. But I think the difference is for families with health concerns, allergy concerns, we need to figure out a precise response for them about where their child can go eat and not have to be worried. And maybe that's the follow-up out of that question that we can do a better job of coming up with.
Can I just add to that, Michelle? Maybe this will be helpful. Food and Nutrition Services is very aware of this problem, and they're probably leaning towards grab and go type sandwiches, lunches and meals. So they're very aware, and they're fully prepared for rooms that they know that there's significant peanut allergies to make adjustments. For example, a no peanut butter room. So I do want you in the community to know Food and Nutrition Services is very aware of this, and is certainly going to do the best to support our teachers and our staff and students. Okay,
I'm glad to know that they're taking all that into account as well, because we've heard from that population very much, my own family included. My quick one word answer. Teresa, thank you again. And I don't know how many farewells we're going to get to have, but thank you again for all of your work, and congratulations on transitioning to retirement, I believe by the end of the month. So the question is, who will be filling in as interim assistant superintendent? Who do we refer people to?
Well, I'll be announcing that when Teresa is leaving. So in another week or so, I'll share who our interim will be. And again, we are in the process of interviewing for the assistant superintendent, and may have that done as early as August. But in the hiring process with everything else going on, it could slip a little bit, and it depends. We want the very best candidates, and we need to look at their timeline, and we need to make sure that we have someone after we go through the process that we think is the right match. But I will be naming an interim within a week's time, and I will certainly make sure SEPTA is well aware of that.
We are delighted. Thank you. And actually, since we have a captive audience too, I want to let everybody know and say thank you. FCPS did reach out to SEPTA and ask us for some feedback on qualities and characteristics that we think would be important in the hiring process for the next assistant superintendent. And our board gave that a lot of thought and deliberation in terms of giving you those answers. So thank you for reaching out to the community to get some information.
Well, Michelle, thank you. And since I don't get a chance always to say this, with 682 people on, Teresa Johnson has done an outstanding job as a leader throughout her really 30 years in Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm very proud of her. She supported me when I was a principal at the high school. She was my PSL and was unbelievable. She was an amazing principal, and she's done an amazing job, and probably, I think, the hardest job across the country to be a part of the cabinet and run special services. And she's a graceful, gracious person, and I wish her the best in retirement, and I thank her for her service in Fairfax County Public Schools.
Thank you, as I do as well. I had a previous relationship with Teresa because she was principal at my kid's school, so thank you again.
Perfect.
I do want to ask people, don't jump off. We have one more poll question to throw at you. But I do want to say a thank you to Catherine for her ASL interpreting tonight. Thank you to Kathy and Mike and Teresa and Scott for all of the time that you're giving to us. Here it is after 9 o'clock at night and you're talking with us. Thank you. Also, thank you for our behind the scenes, Diane and Rachel and Larry, for backing me up and helping with the technology. So here's your question. After this town hall, have you made a decision for the fall? I already had made my decision, 100% virtual, face-to-face, homeschool or private school, or no, I have not decided yet.
And Michelle, I just want to quickly throw in here, we were having questions pour in during this event. I literally could not read them fast enough to even respond.
I'm sure.
So I want to assure everyone that questions that came in, we are saving the questions and we will forward them on to leadership and hopefully get some answers for you. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. And for those of you who have been emailing in your questions, we're trying to respond to them all personally, but do know that we're receiving your emails and we will add them to our lengthy list of questions and for sure pass them on as well. So how does our survey look, Larry? Let's see. All right, we still had our 32% who made their decision, 18% virtual, 14% face-to-face, 3% homeschool, and 44% of us, myself included, are still needing to make our decisions. Thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. Again, thank you to everybody who was on our panel. And we'll all stay tuned for more email announcements from you all as more questions are answered and more information comes out. And we'll go from here. And there's the man behind the curtain, Larry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll keep updating the FAQs between now and the 15th. So keep looking for additional questions to be answered. And it was an honor to be here tonight and have our team share questions and answers with you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Brabrand, will that FAQ, will there be a specific special education FAQ?
Yes. So some of the questions have already been addressed on the general FAQ that's being, because I sent some of the responses on to communications this evening prior to the meeting. We'll answer the rest of them, and please send the rest of them on to me and to Mike and to Jane. And we hope we've already started responding, and we hope to start posting on our special ed FAQ website by the end of the week. That's our goal.
Terrific, thank you. And that gives us some more time to be reading through and trying to make our choices. Thank you. And there's Rachel also. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.